Welcome to another edition of Fabric 5 with Data on Wheels. I'm Steve Hughes, Data on Wheels founder. Today we're still in the Medallion architecture conversation. Focus today will be on putting your Medallion architecture into multiple workspaces. So let's get started. In today's architectural conversation, once again we're delving into Medallion architecture into Fabric. If you're not familiar with Medallion architecture, I encourage you to take some time, look it up, and learn about it, where we're going to focus on the bronze, silver, and gold architecture within a multiple workspace environment. How does this differ from a single workspace environment, and why would you choose it? In this scenario, we would actually create a workspace for bronze, for silver, and for gold. Let's start out with bronze. So an argument can be made that you could create multiple bronze workspaces or a single one. Let's start with a single one. With a single bronze workspace, we've now isolated consumption of raw data. We've also isolated out raw data and anything required to pull that data in, potentially transform it, modify it, change it, use it, whatever we need to do, without exposing that data necessarily to any end user who might be able to misuse it and represent something incorrectly, which we never want to do. We never want to present bad data. So first of all, this is a very hard separation and isolation from our end users to make sure the data that we have that we're bringing in works. Another real consideration is who owns access to my source systems. For example, if I'm running SAP, what if the SAP team managed this workspace? They handled all the connections, they handled how the data was brought in a raw state, making sure it's a correct format, validating the data, saying yes, this data is ready for consumption by the silver environment, depending on where it's going. Maybe it's going to consolidate with other pieces of data. Maybe you have Salesforce and SAP as two different bronze workspaces, allowing teams specially equipped with the access to get that data in and work with and manage the data and prep it for the team. This is actually a pretty good consideration. You can now separate who's bringing raw data into the environment, giving them the space to do it, and prep it for the next tier. From there, we can work with silver, and silver is typically like an operational data store, or everything's in the same format, once again, the same lakehouse. You can do the same thing, keeping all your tools to manage the data, whether it be data flows or pipelines or engineering notebooks. You have the opportunity to sit here and work with that context and let the team or people that are responsible for that have access to silver in that workspace concept. Once again, it gives you a security boundary. It also separates your workload to here, making it easy, making sure that the tools themselves, the pipelines you create, the notebooks you create, all that are relevant for silver. And likely are also relevant to move it to gold, because you wouldn't necessarily want to put all that in your gold workspace, but you could as well. So this could be kind of your data. This could be for your data team that manages silver and gold, could do it together, or they could do it separately, either way. But what you now have is the ability to keep your data consumption artifacts, notebooks, pipelines, similar items, confined to the workspace in which they should be used. So this, once again, gives you a separation of both security and objects, minimizing the object spread that you'd have if you had this in a single workspace, where all those objects would be stored in that workspace. Now you can actually manage it a little differently. You can also manage this differently by putting these workspaces in different capacities for billing purposes if required. Finally, if you put the workspace for gold out by itself, you can now allow additional work against that data by end user teams, create their own views, give them special permissions without risking them actually working backwards into one of the other spaces. It's not that you may want to, it just gives you that level of separation. You could have potentially multiple gold workspaces, depending on how that would look for you and security standpoint and a workload standpoint. You could feasibly have a gold workspace dedicated to a data warehouse or a SQL-oriented environment, and another one that's a lakehouse for Spark-enabled environment for a different set of users. All options on the table, you could do these either way. Keep in mind, one of the goals of Fabric is one lake, one copy of the storage, so try to keep it as refined as possible while at the same time taking advantage of the opportunities you have in front of you. Next time, we'll delve into a little bit more about how we can separate this out a little further. Until then, I hope you enjoyed this video. Looking forward to comments and arguments around this as we move forward. I hope you have a great day. If you like this, like it. Share, subscribe. We'll look forward to seeing you in the next video.